Let's talk about Daniel Andrews, your mate, because he was in Parliament today, decided to hook in as hard as he could when it came to anyone who's got an issue with Belt and Road. Selling out Australia is a great idea. Fistful of dollars, don't worry about it. I can stand up to China. I won't cop it from Canberra. If the Leader of the Opposition wants to take the lead on human rights deregulation to China or any other country, then try to do a trade deal at the same time. Excuse me? I wish him luck because I reckon he will need it. Honestly, Rita, he said openly, you can't take the money and fight against human rights. Instead, we're taking the fistful of dollars. This is outrageous.
Where are his principles, really? It's remarkable that China's gross human rights violations seem to just be not an issue for the Dan Andrews government. We've got more than 1 million Uyghurs in concentration camps. We've got political dissidents who are imprisoned, tortured, and sometimes even killed. Just absurd that you have a state premier saying that he's not going to bring those issues up. If you're going to do deals with the Chinese government and not take the advice of the federal government, not take the advice about how susceptible this makes Victoria and what China's end game is, then you can't ignore those issues. You've got yourself involved at that level. So when people ask you about China's human rights abuses, you better have an answer because you have got into bed with that regime against the advice of everybody, including, I mean, even Albo's not backing this decision. It really is remarkable. And we still don't know, and I wish Nicholas Rees could give us some insight here because he's in deep there with the Labor Party. How much are we in for? The question was asked, the $24.5 billion that we're borrowing to deal with our COVID-19 response, is that coming from China? Is that part of that Belt and Road initiative? Can you give us some clarity on that? Because I think Victorians are entitled to know what their Premier has signed them up for.
All right, Nick, I hope you got the flak jacket on tonight because there's going to be a lot of incoming. What do you think about this? Because it's pretty remarkable, that quote, and I didn't make it up. He said it in Parliament today, in question time, right, where I know parliamentary privilege means you can defame people if you want, you can tell lies if you wish, that he says to the opposition leader that good luck trying to push them on human rights because you can't do a trade deal at the same time.
Well, I'm happy to talk about this till the cows come home, Paul. I mean,
Move, baby, then. Let's go.
Daniel Andrews is doing a bang-up job in Victoria, and whatever you might say about decisions made at certain points, he has been much clearer and much stronger than other leaders around the country, and opinion polls and popular opinion reflects that in Victoria. As for this anti-Belt and Road push that's going on, I mean, I've got to call it for what it is, Paul. This is straight out of 1950s Australia. This is like hysterical in its dimensions. I mean, let's just actually unpick what the Belt and Road Initiative actually is. It's basically an MOU which gives those jurisdictions that sign onto it access to tender for major infrastructure projects that the Chinese are undertaking. It also gives those jurisdictions access to financing options. Now, what you've got to remember is that Victoria is a well-led state. Australia, for that matter, is a well-led country. They're not going to go and enter into a loan agreement or go onto an infrastructure project if it's not in their benefit to do so.
Do you think there's any strings attached?
You cannot be that naive. Come on.
Well,
that is absurd. So why do you think why do you think no other state has entered into this agreement? No other state has. And the advice is, do not do it. And Daniel Andrews has completely disregarded all that advice and is the only leader who has signed up to this initiative. And you want to sit there and act like it's just like any other? We're talking about the Chinese communist regime. Okay, let's not pretend they're like any other body. This is a government that has been pretty clear about its long-term goals. And I just think you're asking people to swallow things that are just unbelievable. Come on.
No strings attached.
So you want to know what naive looks like? the Morrison's government's handling of the inquiry into the starting of COVID-19. You think the Chinese don't know that he had a meeting with Trump earlier in the week, and then Maurice Payne goes on the ABC and just casually announces that there's going to be an inquiry when there's no other countries in the world lined up to do so.
I
mean, there's 200... Hang on a second.
Supported Australia.
All right.
And you stand for the Chinese communist regime.
I never knew I'd have...
Rita, there's 200 countries in the world. There's 200 countries in the world. Did we really need to be the first country to come out and
But if it's climate change, we should lead. If it's a virus that kills 300,000 people, sit in the back. Well, mate, also...
1/3 of our export income goes to China. Do we really need to be the first
So it's all
country
about
to
the
do
money
that?
now. Forget about your principles. Forget about human rights. Forget about what's right. Forget about clarity about the start of a pandemic. It's all about dollars. And if they've got the dollars, we just shut up our mouths and cop it.